The corporate media is dying and the new media revolution is here. It is time to fight for the truth. 2C TV is leading this fight. The channel that challenges the mainstream media and the political establishment, from the left-wing nutters to the globalist elite. Join our revolution and help us win for freedom and common sense. Become a 2C TV Plus member today and get access to uncensored shows, documentaries, and our chat forum. We are the media. Well, hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to 2C TV and your 7 PM UK time live stream, which as of tonight, the schedule is going to be the same, but as of tonight, the 7 PM UK time live stream is going to be our more of a podcast format and discussion, and we'll bring you guys special guests to join us. Obviously, the 10 AM UK time, 1 PM UK time, there will be the latest news updates, which will just give you guys the reports. And at 9 PM, also going forward, 9 PM UK time, we have a new show called 2C Analysis, which we actually do a deep dive into stories, which is not live. That's a non-live. But let's talk about the latest update on the situation with the hostage deal, because it's getting slightly concerning. And for this show, we have a special guest, Potkin Ozarman, who's going to be joining. And by the way, you can see the name of the show down here now, Off the Record. That's the name. I forgot to say it. The name of the podcast is now Off the Record. So we will be talking to Potkin off the record, which is actually ironically on the record. But this is quite fascinating because the way the media, the international media, are in denial of the situation when it comes to the hostages, but also the threat, not just from the Islamists in Gaza, but also the people in charge. The IRGC in Iran, the state of Qatar, and all the others. And we have to talk about this because right now, Israel are waiting for the more hostages to be released, right? As you guys know, Yardan Bibas is one of them, the father of obviously Kfir Bibas, who's only 2, and obviously his brother, who's only 4. Obviously, we also have Ofer Calderon and Keith Siegel are expected to be released from captivity tomorrow. And the problem with this whole saga is that, Bibas himself as a father has been told that his family are dead, and they've actually said that the IDF killed him. I mean, it's not true as far as we know. Siegel is an Israeli-American who was abducted with his wife, Aviva, who was actually freed back in November. We also have, obviously, Calderon's children, Erez and Sahar, were also released in the earlier exchange. But we have to talk about Kfir and obviously the kids, the babies, the toddlers, and the actual families. For example, when it comes to Kfir Bibas, unfortunately, he's feared dead. And they've also said the same back in November. For those who remember, there was all these stories that came out initially from Gaza saying, actually, the problem is that the IDF hit and killed the family. They didn't provide any evidence, but that was the reality. November 2023, saying Hamas announced that they all died in an Israeli strike. Then they said, actually, no, the father is alive. And then they said, yes, we actually have a video. They forced the father. They basically told the father that the rest of your family are gone and it's Netanyahu's fault. So make this video. Remember this?
הפצצנו את המשפחה שלי, הרגת לי את האישה ואת הילדים שלי, כל מה שהיה לי בחיים. מה שאתה יכול לעשות זה להחזיר אותי ואותם הביתה, שיקברו בישראל. אני מתחנן אליך, תחזיר אותי ואת אשתי ואת הילדים שלי הביתה. בבקשה, אני מתחנן אליך.
Emotional torture, right? Now, all this going on, at the same time, they are getting exposed. So the latest video that they've released, obviously another hostage. The Hamas side are a bunch of amateurs. One of them actually put his mask down. So Mossad now definitely know who he is. Watch this. What an idiot. Now, they're not brave enough to actually stand up in front of you like official soldiers, because they've been trained by, back in the day, those who trained the IRGC. I mean, they were the elements of the Soviet Union, the tactics coming from the Soviet Union, which was then adopted by the IRGC, the Islamic occupiers in Iran. Then they decided to, as the godfather of terrorism in the region, to train up all the others, Hezbollah, and they also provided support to Hamas and all these guys. They all have the same tactic. They're cowards. Now, we are going to bring Potkin in a couple of minutes, because we have to talk about what's actually going on with the real threat. So, for example, this evil creature who got infamous because of the 7th of October video when he kidnapped one of the girls, it's now confirmed that he's been eliminated. So that's another good news, I guess. But it goes beyond that. So last night, IDF troops eliminated 2 Palestinian gunmen in Jenin who had earlier killed a soldier and wounded 5 others. The attackers initially escaped, but were later tracked down and eliminated in a second firefight. Again, you can go around and target one by one all these militants and terrorists, but if you don't address the real issue, which goes back to the godfather of Islamism, nothing will change. Now, before we give you guys the update on what's going on with Egypt and the Rafah crossing as well, and the European Union, by the way, European Union are getting involved, because why not? I mean, everyone else is getting involved as well. And President Trump has also responded. Before we give you guys all that, let's quickly go to our special guest, Potkin, journalist, and of course with Iranian heritage as well. Welcome to the show, Potkin. How are you?
Thank you, Mahia. Good to see you again. Hope you're
yes,
good.
Yes, good. So there's a mess, because it feels like the Israeli government, again, just like previous decades, they end up making concessions anyway. So obviously there's a lot of pressure from the Western side. And we know that they could just stay in Gaza and try to play cat and mouse and all that. But if you don't actually address the real issue, and that partly goes to Tehran and in Iran, where the Islamic Republic continues to survive, mostly because it's not being fully cut off. The media will tell you that, no, yeah, it seems like we put all the sanctions on Iran, and Iran is basically just very resilient. That's not true, is it?
No, not at all. And it's just so heartbreaking, Mahia. I mean, let me just go back to when I met Thomas Hand. He's the Irish guy whose 7-year-old daughter at the time, Emily, was taken hostage on 7th of October. I met him in London. And I mean, what do you say to a father who doesn't know where his daughter is? Who's keeping his daughter? His daughter's birthday was coming up at the time, and he was wondering, what is he going to do with, while when it's her birthday? I mean, he'd lost so much weight. He was so distraught. He couldn't stand up. He had to sit down. He literally couldn't stand up. And then when I met him, I mean, what do you say to a man like that? I mean, all I said at the time, I was saying, look, I'm sure she's going to be okay. I'm sure she's going to come back home. I didn't know if she was, but I mean, luckily she did. And you can say that compared to the other hostages who's still there, who still kept as hostages by Hamas. I mean, he was lucky because Emily was one of the first ones that was released very quickly. But I just want to ask one question. Because we talk about Tehran, and we talk about like the military support for Hamas, providing them with weapons and that, but sometimes we forget about talking about the influence peddling that Tehran does, and not just in Hamas, in London. All these like pro-Palestinian protests that we've seen for over a year now in different cities, different locations throughout England. Have you ever seen in any one of them, if they condemn Hamas, if they have one placard that condemns Hamas, that asks for hostages to be released? I mean, you're calling for a ceasefire, yeah? Yeah, I mean, ceasefire is good. You want a ceasefire, I want a ceasefire, but a ceasefire is a two-way thing, isn't it? Have you ever heard them ask Hamas to release the hostages so there can be a ceasefire, so that this conflict could end?
They don't even talk about peace. They never talk about peace.
They're the fifth column of Tehran. I mean, and it's such nonsense about all this like oppression. Look, a resistance, does not rape people, does not kidnap babies. if you imagine, like, during the Soviet years, I mean, the entire Eastern Europe, you could say they were under occupation of the Soviet Union, yeah? And there were many other countries that were under the occupation of the Soviet Union, including some of their own Soviet states.
Yeah.
Did you ever see, say, a resistance group in Czechoslovakia or in Poland go to Russia and kidnap Russian babies and
No.
hold them as hostage in there? You know, I can't. It just beggars belief that we have academics, we have university students supporting one of the cruelest, one of the most barbaric groups that are conducting this conflict and all these atrocities at the moment. It's just unbelievable. And I
It
mean,
is. It.
look at yeah. I mean, look at this family. I mean, you mentioned the Bibas family. So you have the wife Shiri and Kfir, who was 2 years old, I think, or is 2 years old now, and Ariel, who's now 5 years old. The father is going to be released, but he doesn't know what's happening to the rest of the family.
Yeah.
It's just so heartbreaking. The wife's parents, as far as I know, they were killed in that attack. So they've already lost some members of the family. I
Yeah.
mean, who would kidnap a baby and keep a baby as a hostage for 2 years? And then
Well,
you
yeah. I
have
mean, the
university people, academics,
yeah.
students that, they're supposed to be the clever people, the intelligentsia of this country, and they're
Now,
supporting this barbaric group, and they're not
well,
willing to condemn it. They call it a
mm.
resistance group. This is not resistance. This is sheer terror,
Well, one thing is
and
about,
they're
I mean,
nothing but the
university
fifth column.
students, university students, and all these guys. We're kind of used to it, but the so-called grown-ups in the room, and I'm talking about the legacy media, the BBC, and the government's MPs, all these guys who are going around. I mean, for example, in America, the U.S. Democrats, or here the Labour Party, they don't tend to say anything. I mean, they have urgency to talk about Israel having the need to do ceasefire. They always say, Israel, you should do ceasefire. They never say, for example, why is it that the Bibas family, the father is being released, but not the babies, not the toddlers? And why is it that we don't really get the same urgency from the United Nations and the ICC and the European Union and Keir Starmer? They don't speak out. But when it comes to wanting things from Israel, they always speak out very quickly. Is it fear or is it idiocy?
I think it's just sheer idiocy. I can't imagine it to be anything else. I mean, as you know, I've attended some of these protests and I've talked to some of these protesters and that. They're just really ignorant about the topic. And I think that sort of like goes right up to civil servants, to government officials, probably David Lammy or something. I mean, he's made so many gaffes, just goes to show that he really doesn't have that much knowledge about foreign policy. So I think a lot of it comes down to ignorance. I mean, we had another hostage. We had the who's been released, Emily Damari. She was kept in UNRWA facility. No one's asking what was UNRWA doing, providing the facility for the hostage takers. Or they must have known, if she was kept in their facility, they must have known, here's a hostage. This is a
Yeah,
United Nations organization where a hostage is held on their premises, and
yeah.
they're not saying anything. They're just providing their facility for this group.
Well, the United Nations are the same people who, about 2 days ago, in Lebanon, they were flying the Hezbollah flag on their car while the rest of the UN officials were just walking around it, and even the so-called military in Lebanon were just watching. Like, what happened to the Lebanese government's promise to not allow Hezbollah to regroup? I mean, I'm not surprised. It happens all the time, but I'm like, but everyone in the world is now watching you. It's not like 2007, 2010, where these sort of stories were not really being publicized. With the rise of new media and social media, the whole thing is global now. Everyone is like keeping an eye on what's going on in the Middle East. But it seems like they're just gaslighting the global population, right?
Well, I mean, you mentioned the media. I think a lot of the lack of education is coming from the mainstream media. You look at the BBC, for example, they carried out a story about a Palestinian prisoner that was released. I think his name was Nasser Hussein, or Hussein Nasser. I think, yeah, Nasser Hussein, I think his name was. And the way they made it so sort of like sympathetic that after he suffered 20 years of prison, he was arrested during the Intifada. just Intifada, nothing else. So you think, oh, he was like involved on some street protest or something. That's why he spent 20 years in prison. But when you look into the details, this guy carried out at least 2 terrorist attacks. He didn't kill anyone, only because he was unlucky, but he was intending to kill people.
He was incompetent, yeah.
Yeah, exactly, like the one you just showed with the mask coming off. I mean, he drove a suicide bomber to carry out a suicide bombing. He attempted to kill innocent people. So, they don't tell the whole facts. Or you had Sky News that was reporting about this Palestinian grandmother that was shot. They never said that the whole family were stashing weapons for Hamas. This was a family that was involved in terror, and it was very sad. The grandmother was killed during the crossfire, but if the family hadn't been involved in terror activities, it wouldn't have happened. And then you even have other media like Al Jazeera now. When they're talking to the family, you see the pictures of the family members that in their Hamas uniforms and things like that. But when Sky was interviewing them, there was none of that. They just looked like an ordinary family. And it took the Jewish investigative journalist David Collier to investigate that and come up with the facts. So I think the mainstream media is very much at fault for not giving the whole picture to the public.
On the issue of the BBC, actually, as I said, guys, as of tonight, Monday to Friday, obviously we have the 10 a.m. UK time, 1 p.m. UK time, the news show, and then obviously 7 p.m. UK time going forward is going to be Monday to Friday, the Off the Record podcast. But 9 p.m. UK time, Monday to Friday, we have the 2C analysis. Actually, tonight's episode, in a couple of hours, is actually going to be about the BBC, what they did earlier, as Podkin was saying. They choose every day to show you the powerful image of the day, and today's powerful image of the day was a Palestinian terrorist. We're going to actually do a deep dive in that story and actually do an analysis. It's absolutely fascinating. If you don't laugh, it's just too depressing. But Podkin, a lot of people keep asking, okay, so is it getting close now? Is the fall of the IRGC getting close? When is it going to happen? How is it going to happen? What's your basic analysis to be realistic? Because we can't see it going back to the happy days, the golden days of, like, for example, late 90s, early 2000s. They're like, look, we got all the power, everything's fine. How could it come down? Because obviously we don't want the Americans to go and liberate the Iranians. That would be chaos.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, the writing is on the wall. It's very similar to the situation to the Soviet Union a few months before the fall. All the elements suggest that, all the parameters suggest that this regime is going to collapse, even if people don't come out on the streets. I mean, no one came on the streets in the Soviet Union when communism in Russia collapsed. The whole system just collapsed, and the Iranian regime is very near to the collapse. I mean, the strong side was the proxy groups, and they're all being dismantled, and so. The pot is getting smaller, so they're fighting each other. The problem is, it's the alternative. No one's got an organized alternative. There's only one organized alternative, unfortunately, which is, as you know, is a cult group, and it's really not.
Well, they're the Mujahideen, the MK. They're the exactly, Islamist communist group. But I don't see them as organized in the. I mean, they're only organized in terms of having meetings and writing down minutes, but not in terms of mass support. I mean, they're still different.
Absolutely, no mass support. In fact, they're a bogey figure, because the regime says, look, if you want us to go, who do you think is going to come after us? It's going to be the MEK, and tries to scare people. So they've got absolutely no mass. In fact, I think they're even more hated and more despised than the actual regime itself. But unfortunately, they've got funds. They're organised, and there is no
lobby
other
group. The lobby group
alternative like that. But what happens in situations like that is you have certain people who have automatic legitimacy. Because if you imagine, like, if the regime falls tomorrow, I mean, who's going to hold the election? Who's got the authority? Who's got the legitimacy to hold the elections tomorrow? And sometimes you have people,
the Crown Prince, I guess, as a mediator.
Sometimes you have people that have automatic legitimacy. I mean, in Czechoslovakia, it was like Václav Havel, and it was Dubček. Immediately after the fall of the communism in Czechoslovakia, because of their struggle, because of their track record, they were accepted by the majority of people, and they had that automatic legitimacy to carry that transition period. And I think we're going to have to rely on something like that, or there could be like a military coup. It could be sections of the armed forces, because they're just as they've just had enough as well. I mean, you have members of the armed forces, especially the army, right up to the officer and even above, who are having a terrible living condition.
Yeah.
Which is a bit like the situation with Assad's army. I mean, why did the Assad army collapse so quickly? Because there was so much corruption there. The conscripts were getting paid $10 a month. The officers were getting paid $30 a month. The officers were sending the conscripts home so they could have their wage packets, so they could steal their wage packets. So when the HTS came, the officers were there, the weapons were there, but they had no conscript soldiers to fight. So,
but that's the thing. So I mean, the only feasible situation is obviously as the system itself collapses, the military will get involved against the IRGC, but then they would then require others, even from the outside, as in Iranians outside, a legitimate committee. And when people talk about the Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi, I think what is done now over the last few years is to kind of be behind the umbrella of whatever it's called, the council, something about the Iranian Council, Revolutionary Council, which he could basically just say, well, I could be the face as a mediator, but if he steps back and actually allows the so-called council and committee, with the help of the international community, to hold a referendum, then it will help the military people in Iran to say, okay, if we're going to do a coup, we have that option. Like, that's the alternative. Because if they look at the MEK, the Mujahideen communists, and obviously they're not gonna do a coup if they get a phone call from Mariam Rajavi saying, yeah, if you do a coup, my committee will do the referendum. Like, they're gonna say no. So, but if if obviously Reza Pahlavi and people like him, they don't have to be all royalists.
I don't want to get too involved in the internal politics of the opposition in Iran, because I'm not in a position to guide them or to advise them. They're going to know what to do themselves.
Yeah.
But what I see my role is stopping the Islamic Republic's influence here in the UK. Why have they still got so many outlets in the UK? Why have they got so many representative offices? Why are they being allowed to spread their network in the UK? This is what us that live in the UK should be our top priority, to stop the influence of the regime in Iran. What happens in Iran, the people in Iran will decide, and they're quite creative people, as you know, they're very ingenious people, and they will come up with a solution, I'm sure. It's not my role to lead them or to help them or to advise them. It's my role to be their voice, and it's my role to stop the influence of the Islamic Republic in the UK.
And that's what I've been doing. I've been saying that my slogan is always do not turn Britain into another Iran. And I think that should be the priority for those of us who live in this kingdom. But thank you, Podking, for joining. And any last few words?
Well, what you just said, I've just done a podcast interview on my YouTube channel with Sabah Said Pursaidi, who is half Iranian, born here. His father is Iranian, his mother is English. He was sacked from the Housing Association for being a member of the Reform Party. Can you believe it? Because the Housing Association, Hightown Housing Association, was saying that his membership of the Reform Party is not in tune with the values of the Hightown Housing Association. He wanted to be a mold and damp inspector. So I don't know. This is exactly what you just said, is exactly what he said. And he was saying, look, there's two types of people in the Reform Party. There's the native English people who want their old country back, the way it was. And there's the sort of like immigrants like me, like you, like Sabah, that don't want Britain to turn like to the country that we left. We don't want Britain to turn into another.
What was the point of leaving otherwise? Yeah, what was the point of leaving? Anyway,
how's it catching up with us again?
Thank you, Fatkin, for joining. Ladies and gentlemen, let's go back to our the rest of our report. Thank you so much. The rest of the report is getting kind of juicy now, because this is getting weird now. The situation with the Egyptians, they've come out over the last few hours to rally outside the border. The Egyptians are rallying near the Rafah border crossing to oppose Donald Trump's plan to relocate Palestinians to Egypt. As we said, even the Egyptians don't want the Palestinians. The Jordanians don't want the Palestinians because they know what's going to happen. And things are kicking off at the Rafah border because they've been reopening it all day. There have been a lot of debates and logistics. There's a lot of issues. The European Union are getting involved. This is getting really concerning because these people are not competent. So the EU are now at the Rafah crossing, right? And the situation with this, after all these months, the border between Egypt and Gaza were reopened today for the first time since the Israeli military operations began. This was in May. The border crossing will be monitored by the European security forces and operated by Palestinian officials not affiliated with Hamas. Okay, while aid shipments having already begun to enter into southern Gaza through the crossing. Can I just clarify? They are saying the Palestinian agents and officials will be in charge, but don't worry, they're not Hamas. So what are they? Fatah, Islamic Jihad, Mahmoud Abbas's minions from the Palestinian Authority? I don't think we trust any of them. Now, Egypt is not getting involved. They're just protecting their own border. Fair enough. The European Union believe they can help the Palestinians to do this. No, you can't. The EU Foreign Policy Chief, Kaja Kallas, said Europe is here to help. The EU civilian border mission deploys today to the Rafah crossing at the request of the Palestinians. All right, let's see how they do it. Let's give them some time. But let's just say not everyone's happy. Donald Trump obviously has come out to give everybody his idea of relocating the Gazans. That aside, he's been quite busy today. He's been attacking the Western globalists and the Eastern globalists. Genius, as usual. So he hates the agenda coming from the likes of Klaus Schwab and Bill Gates and the people behind the IMF completely manipulating the dollar. But he also is aware that the solution is not the Eastern globalists. The solution is sovereignty, independence, and of course nationalism. So he's come out against BRICS, because BRICS, a bunch of idiots who are going around in the name of fighting against the dollar empire. Their solutions are absolutely stupid. Firstly, the BRICS nations have come out to basically centralize their currency by saying we're going to go digital currency controlled by Beijing. So President Trump said we're going to put a 100% tariffs on BRICS, which is brilliant. So he's threatened us, saying the idea that the BRICS countries are trying to move away from the dollar while we stand by and watch is over. We are going to require a commitment from these seemingly hostile countries that they will neither create a new BRICS currency nor back any other currency to replace the mighty US dollar, or they will face 100% tariffs and should expect to say goodbye to selling into the wonderful US economy. Genius. They can go find another sucker nation. There is no chance that BRICS will replace the US dollar in international trade or anywhere else. And any country that tries should say hello to tariffs and goodbye to America. Genius. Absolutely spot on. You cannot allow, on the one hand, the corrupt, greedy Western globalists to undermine the dollar by basically creating a clique, a club, a closed club with the help of the IMF. They've been ruining our lives already. They've been undermining the dollar. But you also cannot allow the Eastern globalists to do this. Now, President Trump is close to India and Modi. Obviously, he's had conversations with Modi to ensure that obviously the influence of India in BRICS is heard. But they don't seem to care about India. They keep vetoing India left, right, and center, and they ignore India when they veto. So obviously, India has been trying to block Turkey's entry. China and Russia said, actually, we don't really care about what India says. India was there from the beginning. So obviously, the whole thing is controlled by the Chinese Communist Party. And the rest of the membership is just a facade. Now, one thing is for sure. We know that obviously he's also, President Trump is also obviously targeting the Western side for different reasons. So he's now confirmed 25% tariffs on Canada and Mexico that will take effect tomorrow on Saturday, but hasn't decided whether to include oil imports. Fair enough. He claims that the tariffs aim to curb illegal immigration And of course, when it comes to the smuggling and drugs and everything else. Now, one issue with this is that a lot of people don't understand the Trump approach to politics and business. He sees everything as a negotiation and as a combat. So he's not a Puritan free trader. He's also not a Puritan protectionist. He's neither. He's pragmatic. He will use the threat of tariffs to get a better deal. He would make sacrifices to do a deal if that means that tariffs will go away. He always makes the right choice. He's done it in business. He did it the first time he was president. But there are people who are trying to have this pseudo-intellectual debate saying, let's see, is he a free trader or is he a protectionist? No, he's a businessman, and then it's time to say no to all these, again, academic politicians, career politicians who think they have to pick this or that, black or white, left or right. Be pragmatic and go case by case. That's the whole point. And that is the Trump approach. Right, so let's get some reaction from you guys while we are here. Super chat there from Annie saying Potkin. I was like, yeah, love hearts. I think Potkin, someone has a crush on you, Potkin. If you're still watching this. There is a couple of comments. JD says Gazans are heavy drug addicts from the age of 15, and Hamas are addicted to its so-called captagon, and it enables them to kill with a feeling of euphoria. They're also brainwashed. Where are we with you guys? Larry says Trump doesn't understand anything but bully and insane ideas. I wonder how many business empires has Larry created, and how many countries he's managed to lead, Larry. Yeah, it's easy to sit in your ivory towers behind the computer and judge the leaders of the world who actually are successful. We have another one. Heather says, Trump is going to push us into a depression. He keeps ruining his own businesses. He didn't. He's broke. He's not. Our inflation numbers are already up. No, that's not how it works. And instead of worrying about that, he's doing... So many irrational, emotional people. It's so funny. That's not how inflation works. Anyway, do we have any sane person in the live chat? Come on, guys. Matthew says Larry is a loner. Send Gazans to Bahrain. That would be a very mean thing to do to Bahrain. There are lovely people in Bahrain who are fighting against Islamists, and we don't want to add to their problems. No, probably best not to. There's always Greenland. Better weather, right? Now, Larry needs to learn English. Yeah, before trolling, always learn English. It helps. John says, Larry, go get your head examined, you crazy dog. Oh, poor Larry. Come on, guys. All right. Successful person says, great channel. Shouting, great channel. And John says, dude, we were already in a depression. Biden sent all the money out of the country. Take a look at the stock market. Everything. The whole system was completely a mess under Biden. But it was okay because the grown-ups were back in the room for 4 years. Insane. We have another super chat. Natalie is here saying you have funny Abduls using Christian names in the chat. Well, at least they're creative. This is so entertaining. Thank you, Maya. I absolutely love you. Trump and Jesus. Thank you so much. Yeah, where are the Abduls? You know who you are. I'm looking at you. Not in a sexy way. Don't get too excited. CCD says, my TC, make sure you come visit America and the new Gulf of America. You too, Larry. I shall be in the US, but I'm definitely coming to the US in September, but I shall try to get to the White House probably springtime. We'll see. I've got big plans, obviously. I'm all over the place right now because we're still sorting out the engagement party, which is in a couple of weeks. Then we have to sort out the wedding with Danielle. And then I've got to sort out the expansion plans. And I've got to try not to get stabbed in England. That's hard work. Trying not to get stabbed is hard work. And and also, in terms of the US, we have big plans. Don't worry about that. It's going to be huge. It's going to be beautiful. And Florida. Stay tuned when it comes to Florida. Big plans for Florida. All right, where are we with you guys? As in the expansion branch. That's what I mean. Not taking over Florida. Why is it that Jews are falsely accused of genocide for merely fighting against terrorism, while Hamas, they get away? Yeah. That's not the only issue. Let's not forget. Since the 9th of October, 2 days later, after the 7th of October, when the invasion happened, Israel started a counter-terrorism operation in Gaza. Since that day, the whole of the international media and the world governments continue to say the war between Gaza and Israel. It's not a war. Firstly, you don't have the other side bravely fighting, facing you with their tanks and their soldiers. They're a bunch of cowards covering their faces, hiding in holes and tunnels, and using people as human shields. Secondly, it's not a war, it's a counter-terrorism operation because Israel is specifically targeting terrorists. It's not trying to take over. I mean, Israel basically took over Gaza in terms of taking over. Usually that's the end of any war, because you take over the headquarters, the palace, and you get rid of the president or the prime minister or the queen, and then you say victory. Like, for example, I don't know, the Russian forces take over Kiev and they say we've got Zelensky's palace, then it's over, we won. That's war. That's a normal conflict. Territorial. This is a counter-terrorism operation. Israel has been walking around Gaza trying to find these idiots who are hiding in tunnels. And they continue to say, well, the war that Israel started. Hamas invaded Israel on the 7th of October. That's it. It's Friday. These people are giving me a headache. I'm starving. So hungry. Why am I still talking to you guys? Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me. Obviously, another 7 p.m. live stream. But as I said, from today, Monday to Friday, actually, can I just put this for you guys on the screen so you know what I'm actually talking about? So the live shows, technically, Monday to Friday, 10 a.m., 1 p.m., 7 p.m. UK time, yeah? You know that already. 10 a.m. and 1 p.m. UK time, live shows are the news shows, okay? The latest news shows. 7 p.m., which is this, as of today, you can see the name's changed, is Off the Record. That's a podcast, and it's going to be in a podcast format. You could also listen to it on the way, wherever you are. We're going to post it, obviously, on the, whatever it's called, the YouTube music thing. So you can listen to it. It's a podcast. It's more relaxed, chaotic. There's no script. I don't know what I'm talking about. Then 9 p.m., that's the best shows. I'm very excited. First episode is tonight, 9 p.m. UK time. Is not a live stream. It's a edited short video called 2C Analysis. And that's a deep dive into essentially analyzing a specific story. Tonight is about the BBC celebrating the release of Palestinian criminals. It's going to be fun. Trust me. Stay tuned for that. Click on the notification bell if you haven't already. Join 2C TV Plus, become a member. Whew, I need to go eat. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Maya 2C, and we are the media.